Who Gets to Decide? A liberty-based podcast that brings a little piece of sanity to a confused society drowning in a culture of craziness. And here is your host, Seth Martin.
Well, all right. What's up, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Who Gets to Decide. This is episode 661. I'm Seth Martin, your host. Thank you for joining me this evening. Glad you're here and always happy you're listening. Tomorrow, actually, this is July 3rd as I speak. Tomorrow is the 4th of July, or otherwise known as Independence Day. And so I thought we would maybe have a little fun today, but also I wanted to bring up the Supreme Court ruling on birthright citizenship and talk a little bit about that, because that's going to be a big deal. And it was a bad decision, I think, by the court, and not what I was expecting. I thought, given what had happened during the Biden administration, that the court would find its way to see the language in the 14th Amendment as not seeing something other than what's just plainly written there. And, you know, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I have on the screen here a copy of the Declaration of Independence. This is what Independence Day is all about. Okay. Now, as you'll hear in a minute, people have made Independence Day about all kinds of things, from fireworks to days off to partying to all kinds of things. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's kind of like Christmas. You know, we need to remember why Christmas is important. We need to remember why these holidays are important. Now, not all holidays are created equal. And some of you might be offended by this, but Martin Luther King Day is a stupid holiday. Okay. He was an average man in his time. No, let's say he was above average, but Martin Luther King was not the person actually that we remember Martin Luther King to be. We've actually made him much more than he was. He certainly was an important figure in the civil rights movement, but it's just an example of where we've inflated some things and deflated other things. And some of those things I don't think should be deflated, and some things I don't think should be inflated. But that's just me. And we live in this very hyper political world where, you know, white people have to have white guilt, and, you know, we're just never going to live down these founding documents and the coexistence of slavery. And these are just part of the problems that we're going to have to live with. Anyway, what I wanted to do, just like I said, for fun, is play a little bit of Man on the Street. And then after we play some Man on the Street, we're going to come back to this document, and we're actually going to read it, because it's probably one of the most important political documents ever written. And very, very few people know what it says. Now, people will cherry pick certain things like all men are created equal. And, well, if that's true, Seth, then why did we have slaves? Slaves are men. And of course, when we're talking about, and we'll get to this when we get to the text, but when we're talking about created equal, we're talking about born equal. Okay. So the moment you come out of that womb, okay, there's no different, unless you have mental problems or physical problems, there's no difference between you and the other 7.5 billion people that inhabit the planet. Okay. We are all human beings. We are all born the same way. And in that sense, we are equal. But as you know, especially if you've had children, some people are able to give their children more than other people. And unfortunately, some children go hungry, some children go without clothes. And so once you're born, that's when equality begins. And a lot of it has to do with what you're born into. Some people, we used to call it, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we used to call it the Lucky Sperm Club. So if you were trusted, you had a trust fund and a lot of money, you were born into what we call the Lucky Sperm Club. And so there's nothing wrong with that or anything. It's just not what most people experience. Okay. So a very, very, very few minority percentage of people experience that. But everybody experiences being born into the world. And then in that sense, we're created equal. That's what the text means. But of course, they look at the disparities between people once they're adults, and they say, oh, we need to make everybody equal. Well, you can't make everybody equal. You know, that's like me standing up and asserting, well, I want to be equal to LeBron James. I mean, LeBron James has physical abilities that I just do not have, and I am never going to have. And that's the way it is. Once people, you know, after they're born and they start living and they have experiences or they have skills that are developed, there's just inequality. And that's just the nature of life, the existence of life. So anyway, we're going to come back to this document, but I want to go to the man on the street stuff because it's fun. It's a fun listen. And I think, you know, look, this is a holiday, right? We want to have fun. We want to have some beers, maybe watch some fireworks, hang out with friends and family. I'm all for that. But we need to, part of the challenge with America, part of the reason we're so screwed up is people are not learning their history. And I don't know who wrote it, but somebody wrote that those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I think that's true. I think human nature is human nature. So we tend to do what human beings do. If we don't learn from our past, then we typically will repeat the mistakes of the past. So with that, let's jump into this man on the street deal. I love these things. I think the guys that create these are so creative and interesting. So let me pull up the video here and get it started. All right, here we go.
What country did we declare independence from to celebrate the 4th of July?
I don't know.
What is the purpose of 4th of July celebrations?
I'm going to turn it to the guy in the USA shirt.
Fireworks.
A little more specific, a little more specific.
Celebrating our independence.
There we go. A little more specific still. Independence
Day.
from a country. Step in here at any time. Which country was that?
History was not my subject. I slept through that class.
And happy 4th of July.
Thank you. Happy 4th to you guys.
When Jesse Ventura, John Wilkes Booth, and the other founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, what year was that?
1870 something, but I don't remember the specific year.
What's the purpose of 4th of July weekend?
I know, celebrate our independence.
A little more specifically, please.
I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's all I know.
I'm revoking your celebration. You're no longer allowed to celebrate. Celebration canceled. Name 2 of the founding fathers of the United States.
Oh man, you had to start there, huh?
Washington. Hey, I'd asked him, not you.
Oh.
Okay, name one more.
George and Lincoln.
No. Hey, pipe down over there.
It was supposed to be. You're not putting this one on the
We're going to
internet.
have to deport you. No, you don't deserve to be an American.
Yeah.
Get out of our country.
Okay. So that's a couple of them. We'll play a couple of more here in a second. But first of all, one of my pet peeves, and I do this too. I know people are not doing this intentionally, but we don't celebrate the 4th of July. Okay? That's not what we celebrate. What we celebrate is Independence Day. Okay? Now, we run around and we say, Happy 4th of July, and isn't it a beautiful 4th of July, and all this kind of stuff. But we celebrate Independence Day. Independence from who? From what? Okay, that's the logical next question, right? I mean, if we called it Independence Day, maybe more people would run around and go, independence from who? Independence from what? Okay, well, we were a colony of Great Britain. So we typically say over here, we declared our independence from England or Great Britain. And because George III was a tyrant, he was taking free people and forcing them to do things like pay taxes that didn't have anything to do with the revenues weren't given to them. They were collected from them and shipped overseas. And there was there's a lot more injustices than that, especially, the injustices, by the way, that the people that lived in the original colonies endured are nothing, absolutely nothing compared to the injustices that we endure today. That's one of the most important lessons from looking at this holiday, is to learn that we declared independence from England for things that are relatively minor compared to what we're living under today. So that begs the question, are we living under tyranny today? And I would submit to you, yes, we are. We are living under tyranny. And unfortunately, what we're told to do is to engage in the system, to vote. And the problem, as we've discussed before on this program, these things don't, I've voted, I think, in every election, every presidential election for sure, and most of the midterm elections. And I still don't have what I want. So I think it's safe to say that voting doesn't get you what you want. Now, you can engage in the system and become a politician, okay, and maybe get what you want. I don't know, probably not. But I think it's just, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I think it's important to say that the tyranny that we're living under today is much, much, much greater than our founding fathers lived under in 1776 when independence was declared. And I think most people don't know that. Most people don't know any of this, as evidenced by this video, which we'll jump back into because it is kind of funny. All right, let's continue.
Year did the Declaration of Independence get signed? Just you first.
Oh,
Watch your mouth.
I'm sorry. I don't remember, honestly.
1875.
What year was the Declaration of Independence signed?
God. Come on, man.
Hold on, you don't give
off
it away.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yep, it's buried deep in there somewhere.
That's what I'm saying, off the top of my head.
Fourth
I don't
grade.
know, bro.
Hold on, we're still not done with you. We're celebrating independence. What does that mean exactly? Independence from who? 4th of July, what year? Come on. Hold on, don't give it away.
Come on, man. You putting him on the spot. You put him on the spot.
He needs a safe space. 4th of July weekend, we celebrate the Civil War victory, the North over the South, freeing of the slaves. What are you going to be doing to commemorate that?
It's a good question. Probably just out with family, friends, enjoying ourselves. We're out in San Diego, we got to enjoy the sun, the surf, the weather, good people.
What year was the Declaration of Independence signed?
That, my friend, has been a long time for me.
4th of July weekend, we sort of celebrate John Wilkes Booth, Jesse Ventura, the other founding fathers. Mm-hmm. Who's your favorite founding father?
My favorite founding father is...
Who you got to pick out of?
I don't know. Who are my choices? Any of them?
This isn't multiple choice.
Oh, okay. Founding father, Jesse Ventura.
That's my favorite. That can't be your favorite. You got to pick another one.
Can't be mine? I don't even have one.
No, don't even have one. Well, if you had one, what would it be?
Yeah, Who would you say?
I say... Nope, we'll get to you next. Okay, we better get to you next.
Yeah, tell him.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, what an interesting... he says, on this 4th of July, we're celebrating the independence of the victory of the North over the South in the Civil War, and the founding fathers like Jesse Ventura and whoever he said. It's like these people aren't even stopping him and saying, well, those aren't founding fathers. They don't know. They don't even know. They think Jesse Ventura, they're told Jesse Ventura is a founding father, and they don't even know enough to say Jesse Ventura is not a founding father. This is insane. Okay. This is one of the reasons I rail against voting. There's no incentive. What's the incentive for me to learn whatever I can about whatever's going on in the political system so that I can go exercise my right to vote as an educated citizen, as someone who actually does know what's going on. And then one of these dudes can just walk up and cast a vote and just wipe my vote completely out. So voting, and this is something the founding fathers knew. This is something John Locke knew. This is something Thomas Paine knew. I mean, a lot of people knew that democracy, as defined by the Greeks, was not a workable system because you needed to have private property and ownership of land and things like that. And if the masses could just vote that away from you, then there's no incentive to have that. There's no incentive for you to work hard and gain property and gain wealth only to have these three bozos just voted away from you. That's kind of part of the problem with our system. And look, this is going to be kind of controversial what I'm bringing up, but it used to be that you couldn't vote unless you were a male, a white male actually, and you own land. And one of the histories of our country is a history of the expansion of groups' ability to vote. Okay. And if you think about it, I mean, just just forget about how you feel about it. Okay. You don't feel like you believe women should vote, you believe everybody should vote or whatever. Just logically think through it. If there are haves and there are have-nots, which there always are, okay, Jesus said the poor will always be with you, okay? Again, because of inequality, because not everybody's equal. Everybody's born equal, okay? Remember, we're born equal, but that doesn't make everybody equal. We're just born equal, okay? We're created equal. Created equal is another way of saying you're born equal. And that's true, we are. As human beings, we're all born the same way. We all come into the world in the same way. And that's where equality stops, okay? The purpose behind talking about created equal is, and I know some of you are going to say, yeah, but Seth, we had slaves, when this document was created. But the purpose of this statement really is to look at human beings as human beings. Okay. Clearly at the time, because of education level and things like that, blacks were slaves. So they weren't educated. They didn't know as much. So they weren't equal in that sense, but they were equal in the sense that they were human beings. Okay. And yes, some slave owners treated slaves poorly. Okay. That's true. But the vast majority of slave owners, and very, very few people own slaves, by the way, just the wealthiest of the wealthy people own slaves. And most of those people treated their slaves very, very well. Okay. They considered them like family. Okay. All these stories you've heard about slavery, a lot of them just aren't true. Now there's some that are true. Okay. But for the vast majority of people, part of the South was worried about just turning loose slaves without any ability to take care of themselves. That was something they were really worried about. They were concerned for their fellow human being. And I know some of you don't believe this, but if you really want to challenge me on this, go look into it yourself, because you're not going to find this on, you got to dig a little bit to find this kind of information. But anyway, my point is, when we look at something like the Declaration of Independence, when we celebrate the Declaration of Independence, we need to read it, for one thing. We need to know what it says. We need to know who wrote it, okay, and why, right? These are all important things. The what, where, when, and why of anything is the context. That's the story, right? The who, what, where, when, and why. For these people to not know anything and yet vote and not be slaves. I mean, they're able to make their lives work and not know anything about the history of the country. I think that's a sad commentary on fellow citizens. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm sure people overseas see this. People laugh at Vladimir Putin when he goes on TV and he talks about the Russian history. the Russian history to Russians is important, just like American history to Americans should be important. And later on, we're going to talk about birthright citizenship. Part of becoming an American, because we don't all look the same, we don't all have the same heritage and the same blood, right? Blood meaning ethnic blood. You have to have some shared founding. You have to have some shared belief system. And that belief system is rooted in these documents. And for people to not know that belief system is to not understand what it is to be an American. Okay? So this is, I don't know how to say it any other way than that. And when we're letting people that came here illegally just birth children into existence, and we can't assimilate these people, we can't turn them into Americans, if you want to think of it that way. That's what assimilate means. Assimilate means just, we don't have a French culture like the French do. We have a culture of freedom. We have a culture of independence. We have a culture of doing your own thing. Okay. We don't have a culture of, hey, my life is hard. Can the government go steal some shit from some other people and give it to me? That's not our culture in America. Okay. But notice how we're becoming more and more that way. And part of the reason is people don't understand this. They don't get it. They didn't learn it. Maybe their parents are foreign. They don't care. If you assimilate a lot of people all at once, what they tend to do is go move into a neighborhood together. 200 families move into a neighborhood together, and they have their own little, like famously, Chinese have it in San Francisco, Chinatown, right? Or, you see it a lot with these Muslim cultures now. They're moving into cities and taking over large areas. What allows them to do that is when so many come over at one time, it's impossible to assimilate them. It's impossible to put them next door to a white person where they can learn and kind of learn what it is to be an American from the American next door. This is kind of, now, again, if you bring in way too many people at one time, I think it's just human nature to flock together. Okay. But that's not our problem. Our problem is we don't want you to flock together. We want you to flock with us. Okay. That's the condition for coming here. You have to get together with us and take on our culture. Doesn't mean you have to give up on your culture or you can't remember where you came from or anything like that. It just means that you need to adopt the things that made America great, okay, which are freedom, liberty, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. You may not like guns. You may come here from Singapore and go, Seth, I don't like guns. Okay. Okay. Well, you're from Singapore and you don't get to decide. You don't get to come over here from Singapore or India or wherever. And don't get me wrong. I love all these people. People that know me know that I love Indian culture. They know that I love Japanese culture. They know that I love Asian culture in general. Okay. But that doesn't mean that I'm okay with you coming over here and changing what makes America great. And that's what's been happening. Okay. That's what's been happening since I've been alive. Okay. I remember the bicentennial, the 1976. And America is radically different from 1976, radically different. We have way more people that don't know anything about America today than we did back in 1976. And that makes me a little bit sad, to be honest. Okay. Anyway, beating a dead horse. Let's go on with this because it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be entertaining. So let's laugh. Let's enjoy ourselves. And let's continue with this man on the street stuff. I think it's hilarious. I'm going to skip through this one a little bit.
Favorite founding father?
Dang, I don't know what my options is. I say Jeremiah.
Jeremiah?
Yeah.
Wrong answer. 4th of July weekend, we are celebrating our independence from China.
Okay.
Just checking to see what people are doing to celebrate that victory over the Chinese.
Well, I mean, the families always get together, and They just come to the beach and just, have a good time. They just barbecue.
Smoke some weed.
Yeah, you know how that goes. But I mean, it's just a family
Forget
day,
about our history and just have some good times, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's just having a good time. I think
to have
most
too good
people
of a time,
forgot what it's really about.
They definitely have.
But
Thanks for demonstrating.
It brings everybody together, though, which is a good thing.
That's all that matters, though.
Yeah, that's really all that it's about,
When we won World War II, celebrating the victory over the axis of evil on 4th of July, just checking to see what you're going to be doing to celebrate the victory over the Nazis this weekend.
I'm gonna go party, sir.
Party?
Probably, yes.
And lose more brain cells?
Maybe.
Possibly.
But
definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Thanks for demonstrating that.
Okay, yeah. When we got our independence from the Chinese, how, this 4th of July, how are you going to celebrate? This is insane, really, if somebody said that to me, I would say, well, we didn't get our independence from the Chinese. I would immediately push back, right? And most people that know their history would. They wouldn't just roll with it. The other guy, his favorite founding father was Jeremiah. I don't know who that is. I don't know. I think maybe he might be getting confused with the Bible. But anyway, I just think this is funny. Now, the last part, I think this lady, I want you to listen to her carefully. I think she's singing the Declaration of Independence from Schoolhouse Rock. It's just hilarious. She's trying not to sing it, but you can hear some undertones of her singing, and it's kind of funny. Hold on one second here. We'll play that.
We are celebrating a certain
Independence Day.
Tell us what that is exactly.
So the United States got independence from, England, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 1776.
Hey! Tell me anything else?
Is this gonna get edited out because I didn't answer a dumb answer?
No,
we
like to. We've been trying to find someone like you.
Okay, so what about it?
One of the founding fathers.
Benjamin Franklin.
All right.
Thomas Jefferson. Alexander Hamilton.
All right.
John Hancock.
Yes. Thank you for thinking.
Yes, sir.
That was great.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks, guys.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, ensure domestic tranquility to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Happy 4th of July, y'all. Have a great one.
Yes.
Okay, well, that wasn't from the Declaration. That was from the Constitution. So she didn't get that right after all. But it does sound like she's singing it from Schoolhouse Rock, which is interesting. All right, let's switch gears here real quick. And I'm just going to go back to the Declaration of Independence, and I'm going to put it up here. And I'm just going to read it, okay? And I'm going to see if I can read it without my glasses. I may have to grab my glasses if I need to. But it says, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. This is them basically asserting where they get the authority to do this, from nature and nature's God. The laws of nature, right? The basic laws of nature, we have, hundreds, thousands, millions of laws maybe. And we've talked about this before. There are too many laws. You just need a handful of laws. Nature's laws. Do not murder. Okay? Do not rape. Do not harm someone's body. Do not steal. Okay? Do not bear false witness. We only actually need a couple of laws. When I say a couple, let's just say a couple of hundred. Okay? And so they're appealing to the Almighty, the Creator, and the natural laws that the Almighty, the Creator, put into existence. That's what that first paragraph is about. All right, let's continue. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Like, we don't need your permission. We're not arguing with you. These things are self-evident, just like the sun comes up in the east. Okay, these are not up for debate. They're self-evident, meaning we don't need to prove them. We don't need to show you. They just are. Okay? This is one of the brilliant parts about it. Okay, so we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now, we covered that earlier, born equal, okay? That doesn't mean you are equal. There's no such thing. It's impossible. I mean, I gave you the LeBron James example. It's impossible to make me equal to LeBron James or Michael Jordan. It's impossible. Now, when the disparities are that big, I think people recognize that. But what they don't recognize is, why does somebody get to live in a 5,000 square foot house and somebody else only gets to live in a 1,000 square foot house? Because we're not equal. We don't have equal education. We don't have equal income level. Income is about producing value in the marketplace. Some people can produce more value than other people. That's a level of inequality. And there's nothing you can do about it except strive to be better. Jason Stapleton used to say that all the time. He used to say, somebody in the Marine Corps told him this, dude, you just got to be better. I mean, that was their advice to him, which I always thought was hilarious. Anyway, so that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their creator. Okay. So we're created. We didn't come from apes. Okay. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we believe. So these guys clearly believed in God, right? We're endowed by our creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unalienable rights means you can't take them from me. You can't separate these rights from me because they were given to me by the Creator. That among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Life, okay, what do we always talk about? You can't take life, okay? You can't murder people. Your life is yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else. You also can't conscript somebody and go make them fight your war. Why? Because it says right there in the Declaration of Independence that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are guaranteed by this declaration. Okay? That doesn't mean later that you can go, hey, I want to fight. I want the USA to fight Iran, and I'm going to conscript Seth's children to fight in that war. No, because I'm not a slave. Okay? Liberty. What is liberty? Liberty is freedom. I'm wearing my libertarian shirt today. Liberty is for you to choose. Who gets to decide? Who gets to decide what you are going to do with your life? The question answers itself. And the pursuit of happiness. I mean, we don't want some guy at the top saying, Seth, you're going to collect garbage, and John, you're going to sweep the streets, and Billy, you're going to work over here at this water plant, and Susan, you're going to go be an accountant. No. Pursuit of happiness is up to you. Okay? Which is amazing to me. And I know a lot of people living on the streets they have mental health problems and stuff, but your pursuit of happiness, how could that be what you want to pursue? I don't get it. I don't understand why people choose that. A lot of people choose that because they want to do drugs and they don't want people to tell them what to do, which I get, but that's a pretty tough way to, wouldn't it be better just to get yourself financially independent and then not let people tell you what to do? That's maybe a better way to go. All right. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So why do governments exist? This answers the question. Why do we even have governments? Well, because as human beings, we want to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Well, how do we do that if there are marauding gangs running around stealing from us and killing us and taking what we've worked hard to pursue? And the answer is you can't. That's the justification for government. That's the only justification for government. Okay? Governments are instituted among men. Okay, so no man has the right to tell another man how to live what he should do, what he should buy, what he should own, what he shouldn't own, who he should marry. And when I say man, I'm talking about human beings. I'm not talking about just men. And so were they, by the way. It's not like this didn't apply to women. Of course it did. Okay. Men is human beings. That's what they mean by men. All right. Continuing. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, okay, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall most likely to affect safety and happiness. Okay, again, it's interesting because they talk about ends here. We've talked about ends and means on this show before, and how why I believe Democrats are especially dangerous, because they believe whatever ends they're trying to achieve, the means are justified. But what this document is saying is human beings, are an end unto themselves. Okay? We don't need to justify who we are or what we do to anybody. Okay? We're an end unto ourselves. That's what they're saying right there. And governments are not instituted to tell free men what to do. Okay? That's not their purpose. Their purpose is, go back a couple of sentences, to ensure life, liberty, and pursuit of the happiness according to the consent of the governed. Okay? The governed. That's the purpose. Man is an end unto himself. Okay? And whatever means you want to create in government, it doesn't, there should be no ends that apply to man that are other than what man has for himself or herself. All right, continuing here. Let's see. Laying its principles on the foundation, organizing its power in such form as to blah, 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 blah. Okay. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Okay? In other words, we don't want to have a revolution for some minimal reason. These are foundational, principled reasons. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Yeah, I mean, that's a great example of America today. We are evidence of our willingness to suffer rather than take to the streets and murder one another to try to get what we want out of government. Okay? Now, we're suffering a lot of evil, okay, these days. Now, you may not feel it, but if you become a target of the government, you will feel it. Trust me. Just break one of the rules that they hold dear, and you will find yourself suffering quite a bit. Okay, so, but when a long train of abuses, which is what we have in America, okay, really kind of, I mean, we're going to get to this birthright citizenship thing in a minute, but the Patriot Act, why do we still have that exactly? The reason we have that is because politicians have figured out that they like having that power. They like being able to spy on you and to have control over your social media and regulate, as we saw under the Biden administration, regulate your speech by taking away your X account, or your Twitter account, I guess at the time, or your Facebook account, and stifling your speech. All right, where was I? But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government, meaning, their ability to answer to England. We're basically throwing off that system of government. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. Now, in other words, when they say states, now you got to remember, this is before the United States was created. These United States. They used to refer to the states as these United States. But notice they're talking about the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. What states are they talking about? Massachusetts, Delaware, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, all these states. Okay, these states were countries. Okay, states in the 18th century meant countries. Okay, notice how the meaning of that word has changed, and it's not by accident. Okay, it was to gain more power. Anyway, it's not the point of this document, but I just thought I would bring that up. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he is utterly neglected to attend to them. Now, look, we're not going to go through all these because the things that our government is doing to us today are much worse than these. Go read these. These are nothing compared to what this government is suffering under right now. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration, higher and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. And it goes on and on for quite a while. Talks about having to quarter large bodies of armed troops among us for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in neighboring provinces, establishing therein arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit for instrument for inducing the same absolute rule to these colonies. All right, let's skip down a little bit. I mean, what they did is they cataloged the offenses, the reasons, if you will. First, they said they don't need a reason other than these principles that we mentioned, but then they went ahead and listed some reasons. He has done this, he has done that. Okay, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress. Notice that's one of the things in the Bill of Rights, the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances. So they mentioned that here. They've petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We just don't have the language we used to, I guess. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. Okay, so when we're at war, we're enemies, and when we're in peace, we're friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, and that may be these United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. States meaning countries. Okay, there were colonies, and the colonies become countries, otherwise known as states in the 18th century. That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain, see, the state of Great Britain, interesting how they use that, is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most important political documents ever written, and is essentially a roadmap for countries declaring independence, and probably ultimately will be eventually states when states leave the United States, which is, I think, inevitable, but that's for another show. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to switch gears, and I want to talk about the Supreme Court of the United States, specifically this Supreme Court. And I'm going to put my glasses on. I just want to read everybody's name to you. You got, I think I can see them actually. Amy Coney Barrett, starting on the left, upper left, Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, what's her name? Ketanji Brown. I don't know the liberal ones as much because they're not as good. Let's see. Sonia Sotomayor, Clarence Thomas, John Roberts. They're right in the middle. Samuel Alito, and Justice Elena Kagan. That's our Supreme Court. Now, much of this court has been appointed by Republican presidents. But it just goes to show you that you never know who you're appointing. John Roberts was appointed by George W. Bush. Clarence Thomas was appointed. He's a good one. He's a really good one. He was appointed by Reagan. But Amy Coney Barrett was appointed by Trump. Brett Kavanaugh was appointed by Trump. Neil Gorsuch was appointed by, I think he was appointed, who was Neil Gorsuch appointed by? I can't remember. And Samuel Alito was appointed by Trump. Trump has, I think, 3 or 4 of the 9. But in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, okay, but I really thought that given the abuses around immigration that we experienced under Biden, and the fact that this birthright citizenship case was coming before the court, I really thought that they would take this opportunity to address the language after the comma. You know, it says, if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States. If you're born in the United States, comma, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What does that mean, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof? The plain English, reading of it means that you're subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. If you're born here of people that came here illegally, are you subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? This was the question I thought they would bring up, and they did not do that. In fact, they did even worse than that. What they could have done, and Judge Napolitano is going to talk about it here in a second. We're going to play that. What they could have done is kicked it back to the Congress and said, birthright citizenship is still a thing, but Congress could create a law that says that if you came here illegally and you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, then, and you're born here, then you're not a citizen. Okay. You could say something like that. You have to remember the 14th Amendment was created after the Civil War when states in the South were ignoring the citizenship of blacks. Okay. And so what the government wanted to do was codify the fact that if you were born of a newly freed slave, then you were a citizen, and that would not be in question. We didn't want to have this open question, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But obviously, the Congress in the 19th century didn't know that hundreds of thousands of Chinese would be flying over and having babies in the United States of America so that their children could have citizenship. And by the way, what that does, let's say you're a Chinese family and you want to leave China, okay? Because you don't like the way you were treated under COVID, or they don't have the same kind of political freedom we have in China, really. What you could do is you could fly over here, have your baby, okay? Fly back, live in China. And then when your baby gets old enough, you can use your baby to apply for what's called chain migration. So, you could fill out paperwork that allows at least when the child gets to 18, I think, maybe even before, the paperwork can be completed to make the parents citizens. And now you can all fly over to America and be citizens after living your whole life in China. What? Does that seem like what Congress in the 19th century was trying to codify into the Constitution? I don't think so. Not even a little bit. Or we're going to play some video here in a minute. I think it shows, maybe it doesn't. Maybe that was something else in video. But you can see women standing at the border trying to cross that are pregnant. I mean, they have big bellies. They're like a month away from giving birth. Okay. So they're literally coming over here to have a child. And if they get deported, okay, fine. But their child is an American citizen and they can come back later under the chain migration rules. Okay. So I don't think this was part of the understanding of the Congress or the people that lived in the 1870s. Okay. In America. That's not the way they understood America to be. And so this is just crazy. Now, look, for the people that say, oh, but we're all immigrants and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yes. Look, the continent of North America was a huge continent at one time, and we did need large waves of migration to fill it up. And we did that. We have Germans coming over in large waves. We had Irish people coming over in large waves. We had other Europeans coming over in large waves. And as a result, we did fill up the continent, and people moved west, and every place now from east to west is completely full of 360 million people. And so there were policy reasons why we brought in waves of immigrants, okay? But those reasons no longer exist, okay? And so to just hang on to this birthright citizenship is a huge mistake. It's going to destroy the country. It's going to bankrupt the country. And I don't know what happens to a bankrupt country. Most of the time they dissolve into some sort of chaos and then warring factions and civil war and things like that. We'll probably just split up into 50 states is probably what will happen. But that's, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it certainly wouldn't be a choice, right? It would be kind of thrust upon us. And in that sense, it's a bad thing. All right, let's play Judge Napolitano. They get into the weeds a little bit about specifically Justice John Roberts. Oh, sorry, I put something on I didn't mean to put on. Decision, and how that decision is actually creating law. This is always a bad idea, by the way. So without further ado, let's play this.
Judicial analyst Judge Adrian Napolitano, along with former federal prosecutor Doug Burns. Good morning to you both.
Morning,
Judge. Yeah, lots to dive into with this one. So reinforcing longstanding precedent that a child born in America, even to parents here illegally or foreign visitors, are American citizens. Of course, Chief Justice Roberts wrote the majority opinion affirming the 14th Amendment's broad application. We had Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch all dissenting. What's your reaction here? I think you expected this one.
Well, I expected the outcome. I didn't expect, and Doug and I have discussed this off air many times, I didn't expect the chief to write a 200-page treatise on this.
Really long.
I mean, this is about as broad and expansive and cheerleading as you could possibly imagine. It got under the skin of my friend Justice Samuel Alito, who called this one of the worst decisions in the history of the court.
Wow.
And of course, he explained why. In his view, the babies born here of illegal parents and the parents are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because they're subject to the jurisdiction of the country from which they came. Justice Kavanaugh says the 14th Amendment doesn't confer citizenship, but a congressional statute did, and the president's executive order violated the statute. But the majority came down with this very, very broad and expansive definition of birthright citizenship. I know there are some people, because Mark was telling us in the Trump administration, who think there may be some way around it. I don't see one.
So, Doug, what do you think? I mean, is this going to be now something else for either the future Supreme Court to overturn, or do you think someday maybe Congress will deal with it?
Well, it's so interesting because, as the judge and I discussed extensively yesterday, they took it to a constitutional level, which makes it very, very hard, if not impossible, to then enact a statute in Congress. Because you enact a statute in Congress, it goes to the courts, and they say, based on the June 30th ruling, you cannot do that. I endorsed the Kavanaugh approach, which was don't take it to the constitutional level and just say that Congress could fix this. That's what I was saying all along, and I was a little disappointed. I thought that's where the court was going to come out, honestly.
That's why the two of us were surprised that the Chief Justice's 200-page decision was about as expansive as it could possibly be.
So they also upheld state laws barring transgenders from girls.
Look, John Roberts is this... He's just the gift that keeps on giving. The guy is horrible. He's horrible. Now, I have people in my life that says the guy's a genius, and they're lawyers, and okay, whatever. You know, I guess they have their opinion, and they have maybe their opinion is based on something valid. But I just see this guy as look. When you're looking at these things, let me just say it like this. There are really two types of people when you come across lawyers. And if you're a lawyer, I don't mean to offend you. I'm not saying anything negative about you. I'm just saying this is what I've observed. There's two types of lawyers. And one group of lawyers is in a huge majority. And the other group of lawyers is a very minority, let's say. Okay. And Judge Napolitano is in that minority, okay? And he believes that the states are independent and that if it's not written in the Constitution, then the states have a right to do it. If it's either authorized in the Constitution, then the federal government has the right to do it. If it's not authorized, then the federal government doesn't have the right to do it. That's, in short, Judge Napolitano's opinion. Now, that group of people that think like that are lawyers, very, very small group of people. I mean, it's a tenth or maybe 1/5 of the total number of lawyers out there. The vast majority of lawyers think that the federal government should be we should have a strong national government, that the states are basically clients of the federal government, which is not true, okay? If you just look at the founding of America, the states got together and created the federal government. Well, if that's the case, how can the states be clients of the federal government? The states created the federal government. So the independent states collectively are more powerful than the federal government. But what's happened is through case law and these Supreme Court opinions and misinterpretations of amendments that have been added later, or things like the Commerce Clause, or all these quote unquote landmark decisions have all been in the direction, with the exception of Roe v. I can't remember what the overturning of Roe v. Wade was, what that case was called. But when it got overturned, that sent power back to the states, okay? But most of the time what they're doing is they're looking at state laws and they're saying, oh, no, that's unconstitutional. And so they're exerting federal power, even though the Constitution doesn't say anything about it, let's say. They just find some reason to say that it's unconstitutional. This was not the design of the government. The design of the government initially was to have the states be sovereign and that the federal government only be able to do a few things. Because under the Articles of Confederation, which is what we had before the Constitution, things like the states were charging each other tariffs and states were creating their own money, and we wanted to have a common money, and we wanted to have commerce flow freely across the states and stuff like that. But what's happened is the federal government has found all kinds of new powers under the Commerce Clause. So it's not just about having commerce flow regularly across state lines. It's not about that at all. It's about how much water does your toilet use in every single state, or whether or not you can use an incandescent light bulb, or all these rules. And these rules are all justified by the Commerce Clause about making commerce regular. But it doesn't make commerce regular. That it goes beyond making commerce regular. Making commerce regular was really just, hey, not have tariffs between the states, use a common money. This is what meant make commerce regular. But these activist judges have gone in there and they found the supremacy clause. This means the United States government, the federal government, is supreme. No, that's not what the supremacy clause means. But that's what they've made it mean. And so, look, we just have, there's just a lot more lawyers out there and judges that subscribe to this strong national government kind of education or thinking than there is the free and independent states thinking. So anyway, bad news on birthright citizenship. This next one is about the transgender thing, and I think it's pretty much came down the way it was expected. We'll play it real quick since it's part of the same interview, and then we'll come back and say a few things about that and wrap up the show.
And women's school sports, ruling they align with Title IX and biological sex distinctions for fairness. The 3 liberal justices dissented. Judge, what did you take away from this ruling? Did this surprise you?
No surprising at all.
Okay.
The states can regulate for health, safety, welfare, and morality. That's been the constitutional jurisprudence on the 10th Amendment for 100 years. So this is not ordering the states to do it. This is saying they may. And right now it's about half and half. In New Jersey, they allow all kinds of competition. In Texas, of course, they don't. So it's really a public policy judgment made by the legislature of a state. It shouldn't be made by the courts, and it's not made by the executive.
But it's like, this is where it surprised me. I'm surprised that the court didn't do something nationally, because now you have 27 states that ban biological men in women's sports, and you have 23 states that have not taken that action. Do you see now we're an equal protection issue, that the girls in some states get protection, in some cases they don't? Or is this going to be something that another case is going to have to go to, where you sue California and the Supreme Court will have to hear that years later?
First of all, think of the practical problem. Like, I'm going to go to a college in a particular state that either allows it or doesn't to play sports. But again, I think that there will be further fine-tuning, exactly the way you just said. There has to be. But, look, states' rights, I'm all in favor of that. In other words, on all kinds of issues, throw it to the states, let them come up with the rules and so on. But
okay. So he's an example of a lawyer that believes in federalism as it was birthed in the Constitution, okay, in the Continental Congress and all that stuff, okay. The idea was the federal government would only do these things and would do nothing else, and the states and the people would do everything else. That was the idea. It was very simple. And so you have this guy, of course, he's the lawyer, but the other guy's kind of a comment. I'm surprised they didn't do more, and now you got 27 states who, what about the Equal Protection Clause? That's the problem with taking these clauses and making them mean a bunch of stuff is no, you don't take away, I don't know, I can't think of a state. I don't know what states are doing this crazy transgender shit and which ones are not, but I know Texas is not, but let's say California is. I mean, I don't know if California is or not, but let's say California is. If California wants to be crazy and tell its male citizens that they can dress up like a woman and play in women's sports, why do I care about that in Texas? And how is that equal? How do you make an equal protection claim under the law that way? The whole idea is if California wants to live that way, then California should be free to do that. That's the purpose of federalism. Okay. But what it doesn't do is if California decides, oh, we want to get rid of gun ownership. No, you can't do that because that was given to all Americans under the Constitution. That's off limits from the states. See that? Because it's enumerated. It's one of the enumerated powers that United States citizens shall have the right to bear arms. Well, as long as California is going to be in the United States, then the citizens that live in California have the right to bear arms. Okay? That's the way it's supposed to work. Okay? And there were some interesting case law around guns a few years ago that were very contradictory. And I was kind of wondering how it was going to unfold because you've got this whole thing, what's it called? Judicial review. Okay, so judicial review basically says, well, I tell you what, let's not get into it, but essentially you had these contradictory opinions around gun rights. And what the anti-gun people did by pursuing, I think it was it was a case in Chicago that was real famous, and there was another one in Washington, D.C. But by pursuing that case, what they ended up doing is they ended up actually codifying into law the federal power, which was kind of interesting, which I don't think they were expecting to happen. I know that's kind of getting into the weeds, but these are some of the bad things that can happen. And personally, I think that's bad. Like, because Illinois challenged this law, actually the city of Chicago challenged this particular law, it screwed up the constitutional relationship between the federal government and the state. And sometimes that happens. You saw that with Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was just created by the court out of whole cloth. Well, that changed the relationship between the federal government and the states in that particular area. And thankfully, that was righted. That was corrected. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago or whatever? So, some of this stuff is getting corrected, but a whole lot of it is not. And that's just the way the court system is. But part of the problem is 90% of the lawyers believe in this strong central government, with federal supremacy and all that garbage. And only 10% of the lawyers believe in what I'm talking about, where the states are free and independent. And federalism means that you have to abide by these enumerated powers. And if you don't have if they're not enumerated, then you don't have the power. That's what so the federal government should have a lot less power than it has right now. But because 90% of the lawyers coming out of law school believe in the strong national authority and all that mess, you get this kind of central tyranny, which is what we have. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys for coming and listening on Independence Day. Go review your founding fathers in case you get one of those microphones shoved in your face being out and about on the holiday. And don't answer questions like those people did. It's embarrassing. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for coming in. Hey, look, go to YouTube and subscribe to the show. You can view a show on YouTube if you like, but go and like and subscribe. That helps that algorithm churn in new viewers. So I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. Peace. Take care. Happy Independence Day.